All right, guys, today we're going to talk about statistical displays. We're going to talk about statistical questions. We're going to talk about how to answer questions about a statistical display. The three statistical displays that we're going to talk about today are dot plots, and they look kind of like this. They have a number line down here at the bottom, and then you have dots that represent frequency. We're also going to talk about bar graphs. And bar graphs have some sort of measurement down here at the bottom. It might be numbers, it might be categories, and then a bar that goes up to the frequency. And we're also going to talk about pictographs. Pictographs are a frequency chart. So it's again how many times something occurs, but it's denoted with pictures. Okay. All right, so first off, let's talk about dot plots. So the first thing that we need to do, step one, is to develop a statistical question. And as we develop that statistical question, let's just come up with an example. Or an example today is going to be, how many siblings do you have? So our statistical question is one that produces a variety of answers. It's a question that we're going to get lots of different answers to. So this one, how many siblings do you have? If we asked it to everybody, we could collect a lot of different data. So after you develop your statistical question, you're going to collect your data sample. So in this case, let's say that this is our data we collected. Liz says she has 4 siblings, Mike has 3, Susan has 2, Luke has none, he has 0, Janie has 2, Theo has 2, Jackie has 1, and Mark has 3. So this is how many siblings do you have. So first we're going to create our question, we're going to collect the data. Then step 3 is to organize our data. We're going to organize it into a frequency chart. Our frequency chart is going to have our categories on one side, and then we're going to denote frequency with tally marks. So keep in mind when you're working with tally marks that when you get 5, you're going to cross it. That's a bundle, right? That way it's just easier to count in the end, okay? So let's go over here to our data. It says that Liz has 4 siblings. So I'm going to come over here to my 4, and I'm going to put 1 tally mark. Okay, Janie has 2 siblings, so I'm going to come and put a tally mark in the 2. Mike has 3, so there's our tally mark. Theo has 2, so that's another tally. Susan has 2, that's another tally for my 2. Jackie has 1. Luke has 0, and then Mark has 3. So there's our tally marks. So we're going to organize it in our frequency chart, and then step 4, we're actually going to make the display. So when we're making a dot plot, we're going to start off with a number line across the bottom, okay? And when we number our number line, we're going to go from our lowest frequency to our highest frequency. So in this case, we don't have to skip count. We can just go 0 to 4 by ones. So I'm going to have a 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 across my number line. And then we're just going to draw dots to match up with our tally marks that are in our frequency column. Now, a couple things that we have to note is every time that we draw our dot, they all need to be the same size, and they need to be equally distanced apart. That way it doesn't skew our data. So my first one has a 1 in the 0, so I'm going to draw 1 dot. Okay, my 1 has 1 tally mark, so I'm also going to draw 1 dot. My 2 has 3 dots, so I'm going to draw 3 dots to represent the 3 people that had 2 siblings. Now, notice all of my dots are the same size and they are equally distanced apart. 3 siblings has 2 dots, 2 people had that, and then 4 siblings has 1 dot. Now, after we get all of our dots on our dot plot, the last thing that we need to do is give it a title so people know what our data is about. So I'm just going to title this number of siblings. That tells people that this data is about the number of siblings that people have. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at bar graphs. We're going to follow the same 4 steps: develop a statistical question, collect the data, organize the data, and then make the display. So first off, let's come up with our statistical question. And remember, a statistical question is one that has a variety of answers. So our statistical question is going to be, where would you rather go for a hike? Would you go to the forest, to the mountains, to the river, or to the beach. We're going to get a variety of answers as we ask people. So our first step there is to develop the statistical question. Then we're going to collect the data. So here's our data set that we collected, and this is the responses that we got about where people would like to hike. Okay, so after we have our data, we're going to organize our data into a frequency chart. So on our frequency chart, we're going to have our categories on the left, and then we're going to have our frequency on the right, and our frequency we're going to denote with tally marks. Okay, so first off, I'm going to look for how many people said that they would rather hike in the forest. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to come over here to my frequency chart, and I'm going to draw my 4 tally marks for my 4 people that said they would prefer to hike in the forest. All right, now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look for our mountains. So over here in my data set, I'm going to highlight everybody that said they would like to hike in the mountains. And that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to come over here to my frequency chart, and I'm going to draw 5 tally marks, which is a bundle. Remember, it's 4 and a cross. That tells me that that's 5. So there's my 5 tally marks. Now we're going to look at the people that said they'd like to hike at the river. So over here we have 1, 2, 3 people that would prefer to hike in the river. So we're going to put 3 tallies. And then last but not least, we're going to look for the people that said they would prefer to hike at the beach. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that prefer the beach. So we're going to have a bundle of 5 and then 3 more that tell us that 8 people would prefer to hike at the beach. So after we organize our data in our frequency chart, the last step is to actually make the display. So when we're working with our bar graph, first thing we're going to start with here is our X and our Y axis, and they're going to come together, our vertical and our horizontal axis, to kind of make like a little area for us to plot our graph. Okay, now across the x-axis or across our horizontal axis is where we're going to put our categories. So we're going to have our forest, our mountains, our river, and our beach. And then across the vertical axis or our y-axis, that's going to be our frequency. Now our frequency goes from 1 to 8 because 8 was the highest votes that we got. So we've got to make our frequency go up to the highest amount of votes that we have. After that, all we're going to do is we're going to draw the bars that match our categories. So for the forest, we had 4 tally marks or 4 people that preferred that. So when we draw our bar, okay, it's going to go up to 4. For mountains, we had 5 people. So we're going to draw our bar for the mountains, and it's going to go up to 5. For river, we had 3. So when we draw our bar for the river, it's going to go up to 3. And last but not least, we had the beach, which was 8. So we're going to draw our bar, and it's going to go up to the 8. Now, before we're finished, what we're going to do is we're going to give it a title so people know what our data is about. And this one is our preferred hiking places, so that's just the title I'm going to use. So people know when they look at our bar graph that this is talking about the places that people would prefer to hike. All right, now the last statistical display that we're going to talk about is a pictograph. And pictographs are going to follow the same 4-step process that we did for dot plots and that we did for that we did for bar graphs, where we create a statistical question, where we collect the data, then we're going to organize our data, and then we're actually going to make the display. So first off, we're going to develop a statistical question. And our statistical question is one that has a variety of answers. So it's a question we can ask people and get a whole bunch of different answers. So let's go with, what's your favorite type of pizza? Okay, we're going to get lots of different answers. Is it cheese, pepperoni, supreme, or triple meat? So step 2 is to collect the data. Okay, so here's our data set. The C stands for people that voted for cheese pizza. The P's stand for people that voted for pepperoni pizza. The S is for people that voted for supreme pizza. And then the M's are for people that voted for the triple meat. So first off, we make our question, then we collect our data. Now we're going to organize it into our frequency chart. And on our frequency chart, we're going to have our categories on the left and our frequencies on the right. Okay. So first thing we need to do is we need to go back to our data set and count how many people said that cheese was their favorite. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then we're going to draw our tally marks. So I have a bundle of 5 and then 1 additional. That represents our 6 people that prefer cheese pizza. Okay, now let's take a look at our pepperoni. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that said they prefer pepperoni pizza. So we have a bundle of 5 and then 2 additional out here to this side. And that represents the 7 people that said that they would prefer pepperoni pizza. All right, so let's look for supreme people. Here's 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 people that prefer supreme. And then our meat lovers is 1, 2, 3, 4 people that prefer our meat lovers. So we draw 4 tally marks. Now, for our pictograph, we're going to make the display, and we have to use a key to help people know what our images represent. So we're going to use a whole pizza to represent 2 votes, and we're going to use a half of a pizza to represent 1 vote. And that way we don't have to draw like 7 pizzas. So a whole pizza represents 2 votes, and a half of a pizza represents 1 vote. So on our pictograph, we have our categories, and then we're going to put our images out to the side to represent how many votes that it got. So cheese pizza, we see here, got 6 votes. So if 2 votes is a whole pizza, we're going to draw 3 whole pizzas, and that represents 2, 4, 6 people that voted for cheese pizza. For pepperoni pizza, we had 7 people. So we're going to have 2, 4, 6, and then a half of a pizza that represents 1, and that is 7. For supreme pizza, we had 3. So we need to draw a whole pizza because that represents 2, and then 1 half of a pizza because that represents another 1. So that's 2 and 3. And then meat is our last one, our triple meat, and it is 4 people. So we have 2, 4, where we draw 2 whole pizzas, and then that's our pictograph.